Karen Reed's team went to the U.S. Supreme Court with a petition for or a writ of certiorari there. And for those of you who don't know, that when you're denied in the lower federal courts, your next step is to go to the Supreme Court. And in some cases, it's called, well, in some states it has a different name, but for the U.S. Supreme Court, it's called a writ of certiorari. So, and there's two questions. And when you go, you make that writ, whether you're making it to a state court, state Supreme Court, or to a federal Supreme Court, you present a question for them to answer, usually two, at the most three. I've seen some that are longer, but those aren't really real. And the questions, I'll just read them to you. Number one, whether a final and unanimous but unannounced decision by a jury following trial, the prosecution failed to prove a defendant guilty of a charge offense constitutes an acquittal, precluding retrial under the double jeopardy clause. And question two, whether a defendant who produces credible evidence of such a final, unanimous, and unannounced acquittal is entitled to a post-trial hearing to substantiate the fact of such acquittal. So that went into the U.S. Supreme Court today to see whether they will take that writ, grant that writ of certiorari, and answer those two questions.
And I think people need to know what the odds are of that happening. I remember I did a story when I was doing the Legal Edge, and I went to the Supreme Court, and I did this on the steps of the Supreme Court. And I had a bunch of child's blocks, like with numbers on them. And I was using that setting and these blocks to indicate how rare it is for the court to grant certiorari to a case. They get 5,000 to 7,000 cases a year that are just like the one being sent up there by Karen Reed, asking for the court to look at this. Now, the court doesn't care about anything that is, in their opinion, decided law. They're only there to look at things that are in conflict or have issues of first impression. Of 5,000 to 7,000 cases they look at, or at least want to have looked at each year, 54 get looked at.
Holy
54.
Moly. Wow.
So your odds are like a grain of sand, being discovered on the beach.